opening remarks right now?
Yes, you can give your opening remarks. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the SACOG meeting of Thursday, November the 10th, 2022. I am glad to see each and every one of you here today. We have an exciting agenda, and I'm confident that you will enjoy it. To get us started, we will have Councilmember Jay Chenier, Councilmember from the city of Sacramento, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Chenier.
By the way, you're much better in person at the pledge than you are on Zoom. I just want to give you some credit.
Okay, I didn't quite hear the pledge, so I hope everyone else did.
No.
No?
Yes, we're good, Chair Jennings.
Okay, good. All right, would you please take the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Just before I do that, just want to let our board members know who are in the room this morning, and we're grateful for your attendance. We have Chair Jennings. We have quite a few members here today. It's great. If you would like to speak or make a comment, you don't need to hold up your microphone. You can just push the button, and when the green light is on, that means that you're being heard through the system. All right, I'll go ahead and take attendance now. Director Baines.
Present.
Bernasconi.
Here.
Bradford.
Here.
Gilchrist for Branscombe.
Here.
Boulahan.
Here.
Burris.
Here.
Clark Kretz.
Here.
Desmond. Here. Frericks. Here. Frost.
Here.
Gallardo.
Here.
Gog.
Yes.
Gore.
Here.
Guerrero. Absent Harris.
Here.
Joyner.
Here.
Kozlowski.
Here.
Lozano.
Here.
Middleton.
Here.
New.
Here.
Sander.
Here.
Saragosa.
Here.
Saylor.
Here.
Chenier. Spokley. Absent. Vega for Stallard.
Here.
Soon. Thomas. West.
Here.
Vice Chair Kennedy absent. Chair Jennings.
Here.
And ex officio member Padilla for Benny Paul.
Here.
Thank you.
Sounds like we have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
That is good. Okay, moving on now to public communication. And this is a time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Lynette, did we receive any public comments, or is there a member of the public who wishes to comment?
There are no public communications.
Okay, with that being said, we will now move on to our consent calendar. And these are items that are intended to be approved in one motion. However, anyone can remove an item for a separate discussion. Does any director have an item that they would wish to remove at this time?
Mr. Chair, this is Director Frericks. I just
Yes.
have, I need to recuse myself on item 11 on the consent calendar, which is the legal services agreement to Sloan Sky, Young, and Wong. Thank you very much. Just need to recuse myself on that item.
Thank you. That is now noted. Does any other director wish to remove an item or have a comment on item?
No. Chair
Lynette?
Jennings move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, let's go to the public first, and then I'll take that as a motion. Lynette, is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item for public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, and so I think I heard Was that Director Gog who
Yes.
made the motion? Is there a second to approve the calendar, the item?
New moves for a second.
New move second. Lynette, would you please call a roll call vote?
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bernasconi,
Yes.
Bradford,
Aye.
Gilchrist for Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond, Frericks,
Aye.
with the, and on the recusal of that
With
item.
recusal on item 11, yes,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Orr,
Aye.
Guerrero, absent Harris,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Kozowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier, Spokely, absent Stallard, excuse me, Vega for Stallard,
Aye.
Soon, Thomas. Aye. West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy is absent. Chair Jennings,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you, thank you.
Did you call for
Okay,
us?
we will now. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Director Frost, were you
I'm
asked if I,
sorry. I didn't know if you called my name, but I'm an aye.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Frost. Let's now move to the action part of our agenda. We're going to hear action item number 15, which is the election of the 2023 chair and vice chair. I asked Director Gore to serve on as the chair of the nominating committee, and I want to thank her for saying yes and agreeing to serve. And Director Gore will present this item.
Thank you, Chair Jennings, and good morning, everyone, as we move to our exciting agenda per our chair. I appreciate that. First of all, I want to say thank you to the directors who offered and volunteered to serve on the nominating committee, and those were Directors Bradford, Baines, Lozano, Thomas, Guerrero, and Frericks. I really appreciate the conversations that we had. We had a number of directors submit their names for consideration for vice chair for this next year. We have a great group of people who applied and really appreciate people's willingness to step up and serve in a really challenging position, because this board, as I tell people, is probably my most complicated board I serve on. And we all know that, right? So with that, we had a robust conversation. What we asked each of the candidates to do was to submit a statement of interest. So instead of doing in-person interviews or Zoom interviews, we asked each of them to put forward a statement of interest. And that helped us as we weighed our deliberations. But we did look at people who participated in leadership roles here at SACOG, length of service, their area of jurisdiction that they represent. And the committee came together and we would like to nominate Michael Zaragoza as vice chair for this next year. And then in addition, we would like to nominate Vice Chair Kennedy to be chair of SACOG this next year. And that is my report. Any questions?
Is there a director that has a question or comment? And I would join in a round of applause with Director Saylor on as well. But is there anyone that has a question or a comment that they'd like to make at this point in time? Any director?
I do have a comment, Chair Jennings. This is Wendy Thomas. Just want to thank Bonnie for her leadership on this. The folks that put their name in the hat in the ring for this, they were all just incredibly qualified people. It was an incredibly difficult decision. But Bonnie, your leadership in walking us through this made it a very productive process, and I really want to thank you for that. And just want to thank, everyone that stepped up and was a nominee. It's just a really challenging decision, and yet I know, Michael, that you will represent us incredibly well, Director Zaragoza, in the vice chair role and balancing out rural versus urban and just making sure that leadership at SACOG has a broad representation as we move into the future. So I'm excited about the future ahead, and thank you everyone for stepping up.
Thank you for those comments. Any other director that has a question or a comment at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
Director Saragosa, I just want to thank the Select Committee. I'm truly honored to be selected for this position and looking forward to working with Supervisor Kennedy, our new chairman, and looking forward to 2023. So thank you, everybody.
thank you. Thank you for your leadership. And I want to thank all those who stepped up and put their name in the hat. This is a challenging time for leadership, and we have leaders who stepped up in order to lead this very important organization. So I want to thank them as well. So any other members that would like to make a statement or have a question? And with that, if not, I would look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Would you state your name, please, so I can get that for the record?
Moved by Kozlowski.
Seconded by Soon.
All right, it has been moved in second. Lynette, would you please take a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bernasconi,
Yes.
Bradford,
Aye.
Gilchrist for Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond, Frericks,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore,
Aye.
Guerrero, absent Harris,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier, Spokely,
Yes.
Stallard, Vega for Stallard,
Aye.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kennedy is absent, and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Enthusiastically, yes. And thank you all for supporting this wonderful, wonderful leadership. And thank you again, Director Gore, for leading our nominating committee. You did a great job. I heard from all the directors, and you did a great job. So as I knew you would. So congratulations on the 2023 leadership. We are looking forward to supporting you and following you and doing everything we can to work with you to accomplish the goals and objectives of SACOG. So with that said, let's move to item number 16, which is extending the timeline for the blueprint plan. We have SACOG staff member Clint Holson, who will present this item.
Good morning, board. So this item comes to you from the Transportation Committee. They're recommending an action today to authorize staff to pursue an extension of our blueprint update from early next year. We were looking at, early 2024. We were looking around spring of 2024 for adoption, to push that out to fall of 2025. That'll require some state legislation. We'll have to work with our state and federal partners. There's likely there's a kind of what we're calling an interim regional transportation plan update to keep us eligible for spending federal dollars during that time. So there's some steps that have to be taken in order to get this extension. What we're looking from you today is to go ahead and authorize staff to go out and pursue all those steps and then report back to the appropriate committees and the board next year on progress, on new risks or new steps that pop up as we do that work. This item was discussed at the Transportation Committee. In your packet, there were a couple of additional questions that we didn't have in the original attachment, particularly around an issue we faced during the adoption of the last plan with a change in federal fuel efficiency standards, the safe vehicle rule, and the potential risk for something like that happening in the next plan. So we've added a discussion on that in your attachment in your packet, as well as some implications for the regional housing needs allocation process. Both of those we have, there is some change, maybe some risk to both of those things, but we have a plan or some idea of what those risks are and how we can mitigate those. So those are added to your packet. Really what we're trying to do with this extension is get out and allow us to spend more time with the pathways with you and talking about our different pathways, our different scenarios for the future, and then also work a lot more with electeds around the region, with the public, with community-based organizations and other stakeholders. These plan updates, they can be very technical. They often, even though they take a couple of years to do, it feels rushed. It doesn't always allow for the type of public outreach and stakeholder outreach that this board has requested in the past. So we're wanting to take more time to do that. This also allows us to align with our mega region partners. So it puts us on the exact same schedule as MTC in the Bay Area, and takes us from about 3 years off from San Joaquin to about a year. So that is a huge benefit and was a priority of the Mega Region Working Group. We also have a $5 million RAISE grant that we got from the federal government. This will allow us to incorporate more of that outreach and the work on that RAISE grant into the plan update process. So those are the benefits we're looking to capture with this extension. Some of the risks are, we need this plan to be eligible for federal and state funding. That's why we want to pursue an interim RTP that would keep the federal document live and eligible for spending federal dollars. And then the extension on the SCS, the state component, would keep us eligible for SB1 programs. So those are the kind of the main risks that we're identifying right now. We have a plan for both of those, but I will stop there. And if there's any questions or any comments, I'm happy to take those now.
Okay. I'd like to open it up for directors that have a question or a comment as it relates to this important item.
Chair Jennings, this is Director Bradford. Just wanted to comment. I think it's great that we're looking to spend more time doing outreach with the public and with elected officials and with our communities. I'm very supportive of that. I have one extremely minor question. Assuming the board supports this, do we plan to rename it to the Blueprint 2025 instead of Blueprint 2024?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
We were thinking Blueprint, formerly known as 20.
That was good. That was good. Okay. Any other directors have a question or a comment?
Chair Jennings, this is Director Frericks. Two quick things. One, firstly, I think we should now just actually call it the Bradford, and henceforth the Bradford Amendment or something, no, but in all seriousness, I think appreciate the staff report and the work on this by Clint et al. I think it's really important, I think this part, it was stated, but I think was a little bit understated, this issue of trying to align our timing with MTC in the Bay Area and also San Joaquin, because increasingly, we've been doing this work together in the sort of the mega region. It is very important having all three regions be off cycle with each other now in terms of the funding processes. I think is going to be a disadvantage in the future. So the key is to make sure that we are aligned and having our planning processes sort of going along at the same time, especially as we have this sort of mega region, identified mega region, dozen big mega projects throughout the region, the Northern California mega region. I think it's going to be really important for us to continue to sort of make sure that our planning processes in the three separate regions are sort of concurrently occurring. So especially as it relates to potential future state and federal funding. Thanks very much.
Well said. Well said. Any other directors?
Bernasconi here. I am supportive of the time extension, but would like to make sure that we have staff further investigate the RHNA implications. In the future, the decision to use this blueprint or to develop new forecasts for the new RHNA cycle will be significant. And I just want to make sure that we all understand what that could mean.
Okay. So we can have a staff report come back and let us know the impact or what that truly means for this decision. You good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm happy to move the item. I'm happy to move the item. This is Frericks.
Bradford will second.
Okay. Just want to make sure before we take those, I've got the movement of the item in the second. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Chair
With
Jennings,
no further comment. Would you please take the roll?
I'll do it after.
Sure.
It's not important.
And then following roll, Chair Jennings, I believe James wants to make a comment. So I'll go ahead and
Okay.
take roll.
Thank you, Lynette.
Director Baines,
Aye.
Bernasconi,
Yes.
Bradford,
Aye.
Gilchrist for Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond, Frericks,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore,
Aye.
Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza, Sailor,
Aye.
Finier, Spokely,
Yes.
Vega for Stallard,
Aye.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy is absent, and Chair Jennings.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you, thank you.
Chair Jennings.
Yes, please.
Okay, just a couple of comments. And Director Bernasconi, I wanted just to make sure that I directly responded. We actually had a great discussion at the Transportation Committee. Director Soon brought up the issue on RENA. So we hear you, and absolutely, yes, we'll be bringing back sort of analysis and information sort of what it all means. So number one. And second, I do, and I also Director Soon had requested, I didn't make a formal motion, but had requested updates, right? Even as early as the January board meeting in the new year, just to see how state legislation is going, right? So this is not the last you'll hear of this. We'll be back and giving you a sense of how likely we think it is to be able to get a bill introduced to extend the timeline of our SCS. And as we were saying in the Transportation Committee, look, there are risks on both sides of this, right? And we don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. We think the best way to approach this is to be all in on state legislation to extend the timeline, manage the risks, do the outreach, because the biggest risk is actually whether or not we meet our greenhouse gas target the next plan cycle. And that will not be easy. That'll probably take a lot of back and forth. That'll take a lot of discussion and debate, not just in this boardroom, right, but around the region. And we, at the end of this, we want the region to come together to feel like this is our future, this is our plan. And many of you have made these comments. That's going to take work. That's going to take engagement. That's going to take outreach. And especially now with a lot of our commitment to equity and our RAISE grant that we won from the feds, it's really also going to take a lot of involvement from our lower income communities, communities of color, and our rural communities, all of whom are, you know, we are intending to engage much more deeply through that RAISE grant. So I just wanted to put the finer point on this. A lot more to come. We do think there's a lot of benefits, but the risks we will do our best at managing, and we will be back in front of you early in 2023 to give you updates on those.
And James, let us know when we have a legislator that's been identified to carry the legislation on this, so that we can all send letters in and do what we need to do in order to make this as smooth of a process. And no bill's easy, even when it's an easy item.
Absolutely.
So,
And I know, obviously, you know, a lot of the results still kind of hang in the balance, but it looks like we'll have some, we know we will have new members of our regional delegation, right? So we're going to need all of you to engage those legislators. And as Director Frericks was saying earlier, we're even hopeful that our Bay Area colleagues could get the Bay Area delegation to engage as well, since we're lining the plans up on the same timeline, right? And that's actually a nice side benefit of a mega region effort here, is like across Northern California, we could really bring that, bring those legislators and that to bear. But this will not just be a slam dunk. This will be an effort that and legislation that we're going to have to really get behind, and we're going to need your help on.
You can count on us. You can absolutely count on us. We will be there to help every single step of the way. So, good. Any other questions or comments? With that, we will move on to our information item number 18, the federal correction update.
Chair
Action.
Jennings?
Yes.
Sorry, we are actually on agenda item number 17, which
I
is
thought
our
we had-
last action item.
I thought we had taken the vote on that.
We just took the vote on 16, so
Oh,
we're all set now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
thought we had taken the vote on 17. Okay, so now let's take the vote then.
We actually took the vote, Chair Jennings, so now we're ready for agenda item 17, if that's okay with
Which
you.
is our last action item of the day. And that's Garrett Ballard Rosa, SACOG staff member, that will present the item.
Great, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very excited to present as the action item, the first ever Green Means Go funding recommendations. Of course, the first of what we hope are many cycles of Green Means Go. Green Means Go is SACOG's newest program. It's brought about by a collective effort of this board in bringing in new dollars to the region to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, revitalize existing communities, and provide more transportation options in locally adopted green zones. So really the Sacramento region's response to sort of state and regional and local objectives. So again, these are new dollars coming into the region, resulting from the work of this board and this agency and so many partners around the region. What we're talking about today is actually just the first cycle of these awards, so just $3 million of the 34 plus million that's coming into the region. But I do want to take a step back in that Green Means Go is our new program and talk about what we've been doing in Green Means Go writ large. The Lunar Committee's had the benefit of hearing about this, but the full board has not, before I turn into the $3 million in rewards that we're going to ask for an action today. So again, Green Means Go. The cornerstone of what we've been doing this past year in standing up this program is the funding program. So we stood up 3 brand new programs. The first is what's called early activation, as the name applies, trying to get some momentum across the region in some of these local projects and in locally adopted green zones that help bring in more infill housing. $3 million in that program. And it's going to be followed by some planning and capital awards that this board will consider in 2023. We learned a lot of lessons from some other funding programs, including our transportation funding program. So for example, we had a pre-application consultation with all sponsors, and we've also worked on the green zones themselves. Again, these are the locally adopted areas that have momentum around housing, that have capacity for housing, and have the policy to support infill housing. And so now 26 of the 28 jurisdictions in SACOG have adopted those green zones. And then finally, we've been able to put together some data and tools that help sort of showcase the housing potential in those green zones. So again, the main thrust has been standing up those new programs, these funding programs, and we think we're ahead of the rest of the state in sort of demonstrating the need for infill housing here in the region. But we've complemented those funding programs with some technical assistance activity. And so listening to this board, both in Green Means Go items and in more broad items, right, we've heard loud and clear, right, the need to pair that work with bringing in market perspective, development perspective. So we're very, very pleased to have partnered with Urban Land Institute on 2 efforts. And so last week, we were actually up in Yuba City and Marysville on a great effort of looking at the barriers for housing in a small town setting. So we delved down into 2 specific sites, one in Yuba City and one in Marysville, had a really great panel of ULI experts thinking about those sites. So they're still working on their recommendations, which will go back to both of those city councils. Of course, we'll share that through our Green Means Go outreach, but really thinking about what it takes to get housing from a market, from an infill feasibility perspective. So that was the work up in Yuba City and Marysville. And we're pairing that with the forthcoming ULI effort, what's going to be in Sacramento County and Folsom. And this is what's called an advisory service panel, where they're bringing in a set of experts, similar type of skill sets, multifamily development, market economics, pro forma, the breadth of expertise you need from a development perspective, going to look at the North Watt corridor in Sacramento County and look at Folsom Central Business District. Again, thinking about commercial corridors and thinking about some of the barriers they might face for infill housing, but also the opportunities around a changing retail environment and how that might lend itself to more housing. So we are in the process of getting that effort advertised. Just wanted to call attention to it was in James's executive director report. But on November 18th here or online is going to be the culminating presentation of that work from this outside panel of ULI experts talking about those 2 suburban commercial corridors, but also then commercial corridors writ large in the whole Sacramento region. What are the barriers they face, and then what are their recommendations to development practitioners and professionals to bring more housing in? So we'll be broadcasting that through the networks, but just want to call attention to, if you have your calendars up and you're interested, we'd love to see you here or online, November 18th, Friday, 8:30 in the morning for that. And then finally, so again, the ULI efforts, and then finally, it's great to have momentum. We're also now going to be coordinating with the infrastructure providers themselves and the cities and counties, be talking about impact fees and infill setting. So we'll be doing convening on December 8th for that. So again, a lot of work around Green Means Go. I wanted to give that context for the funding action you'll be taking today about when we see Green Means Go, we see hopefully funding awards, we see technical assistance, we see engaging with our broad set of partners, we see continued work around policy. So it's that whole package of what we're trying to do with Green Means Go. And again, these are new funds coming into the region. So hopefully you see the value of what we've been able to do collectively, working with your partners at the city and county and community groups this year. We're looking forward to more of this in the future. So that's just all background. Let me bring it back now to the staff item. Again, before you today for recommendation through the Lunar Committee is $3.2 million in awards, the first set of Green Means Go. It will follow in early 2023 with another 30 plus million. So this is just the first 10%, another 30 plus million of Green Means Go funding awards. Of course, like any funding program, it's an oversubscribed category, this one today. Even with the budget, there's still great projects that aren't part of the staff recommendation. One thing I should emphasize is all of these projects, even the ones that aren't part of the staff recommendation, are Green Means Go supportive. As I mentioned, we went through that pre-application phase where we talked with all sponsors, and so obviously all these projects are Green Means Go supportive. The staff item lays out the criteria we use, and then attachment B is sort of the project by project summary of the working group recommendation. So we of course recognize the projects that aren't included in the staff recommendation, the disappointment, but in the oversubscribed program that we tried to lay out in the staff item, the reasoning behind that. So with that, the action before you is to adopt these funding awards. If that action is carried forward, we'd be able then to move forward and execute agreements with all of those partners and move forward on these important projects. And that concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to our directors. Is there a director that has a question or comment of Clint or any of the staff? Lynette, am I seeing anybody?
There's no questions in the room.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment?
There's no public comment.
So therefore, I would look for a motion to approve. Please
New
state your
move for
name.
approval.
Second by Galdo.
It has been moved and seconded. Would you please take the roll, Lynette?
Yes, I didn't quite catch who motioned.
New
Director
moves for approval.
Thank you.
New.
All right, I'll go ahead and take roll. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bernasconi,
Yes.
Bradford,
Aye.
Gil Christopher Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Desmond, Frericks,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore,
Yes.
Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lozano,
Aye.
Middleton,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Saragosa,
Aye.
Sailor,
Aye.
Chenier, Spokely,
Yes.
Vega for Stallard,
Aye.
Soon, Thomas,
Aye.
West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kennedy is absent, and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Chair
And
Jennings.
Lynette, thank you so much for keeping me on point.
No
And you-
problem.
Chair Jennings, I'm gonna. Treasurer Gilchrist.
I'd like to make a comment. I want to thank you for coming to Marysville. I wish I I wish I could have spent a little more time with you, but I really want to thank you for coming to the city of Marysville. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Anytime, honestly. Yeah, and I'll give an update on actually our tours of all the boards and councils in my report. But just on the Green Means Go item, I just wanted to, obviously Garrett does such a good job presenting. You didn't have any questions. 3.2 million. There is another tranche, a much bigger one coming, right? And those recommendations will come to you early in the new year. The 3.2 is part of that money that, again, as you talked about, the board putting its shoulder into things at the state level, that this board helped win through the state budget. Actually, it was Senator Penn who carried this. And so that came through the Strategic Growth Council. And another, I just want to give their due to the Strategic Growth Council. The timing on this money was such a quick turnaround, quick expenditure, that very few applicants were actually eligible for a very quick turnaround. We worked with SGC. We have good relationships with these state partners. They were able to extend that timeline, which is why you got a more diverse set of jurisdictions that were eligible for these funds. So we went from 1 year to 2 years, and that actually allowed more to come in. So I just want to, I know sometimes we can get frustrated with some of our state partners. This was a great relationship, very nimble, very quick. They're very excited about what we're doing with Green Means Go as a model across the state. And my hope too, they'll be here on November 18th for that, the debrief from ULI in those commercial corridors. So just to, again, thank you to the board for all of this work, more to come. Thank you to the Strategic Growth Council for their ability to work with us.
All right. Thank you, James. Okay, I think I'm now ready to present the information item that I was ready to present 10 minutes ago. Information on item number 18, the Federal Corrective Action Update. And SACOG staff member Eric Johnson will present that item.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So a bit of background on this item before you today. In April of 2021, the Federal Highway Administration issued what is called a corrective action to Caltrans. And so you may be asking, why is this in front of SACOG? So this issue directly relates to the federal funds that SACOG receives that we go through our 4-county funding rounds, the STBG or CMAQ funds. These are funds for road projects, transit projects, clean air related transportation projects. And so there is an impact on SACOG because what FHWA has indicated to the state is that the way that funds are handled by metropolitan planning organizations such as SACOG across the state are, in their view, not in compliance with federal requirements. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. A bit of background. So since the 90s, the way that federal funding works in the state of California and across the nation has really been what we have always thought is the way that things work. Back at that time, prior to that time, most of the funding decisions for transportation were done at the state level. Congress made some changes at that time. The state of California also made some changes to push some of that decision-making body down to lower levels. In our region, what was done is that 2 county-level entities, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, SACOG made agreements with those entities to say that they're the planning bodies, and there's a separate state designation, the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. SACOG is that for the 4 counties. So when we talk about funding rounds, we're really using those state labels, and El Dorado and Placer are serving those for the state purposes. However, in our region, we have always felt that it really makes sense for those regional planning entities to make decisions about how funding and projects are prioritized because they're closest to that, and we have a coordinating role. And SACOG is required to ensure that we're all complying with federal requirements. And we believe that we've done that over time. And so the way that it has worked in the past is that El Dorado and Placer have run funding rounds at the same time that SACOG is running a funding round for the 4-county area. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. Back one, there you go. Okay, so there's really 3 parts to this corrective action from the Federal Highway Administration. The first is that federal transportation funds cannot be suballocated by population or mode to cities or counties. And the implication here really is that the way that we have determined the funding that goes to El Dorado and Placer counties has been by looking at population. Caltrans, in its calculations of how funding is actually distributed around the state, they are allowed to do that on a population basis. And so they really divide it up by MPO in that way. Well, of course, you know, we are a collection of cities and counties, and so therefore there's a population number attributed to each of those. And so it's simply a mathematical exercise. And so the continuation of using that as the method for how we push funding to El Dorado and Placer counties to continue their processes is being challenged by this corrective action. The second part of the corrective action from the Federal Highway Administration is that MPOs must be involved in the eligibility screening and do that prior to the selection of projects. And this is something that we believe we have done a good job of, and there's some areas where we can document our processes and have more involvement to ensure that there's good compliance across the region with those federal requirements. And then the final component of this is that federally funded transportation projects should be selected, which is not a term that is defined in federal law, by the MPO. So moving on to the next slide about what potentially we can do as a region moving forward. So we have been working closely over the past year or so with our partners in El Dorado and Placer counties to develop what we think is a plan that complies with federal requirements. And how we would achieve this is moving away from a population-based formula for how funding is awarded to El Dorado and Placer counties to establishing a policy-based target where we would look at a number of factors that we already look at in our planning processes to see where are their needs and how do we ensure that the funding that's being applied across the region really helps us advance what we're trying to do as a region. And so it's not a guarantee, but it is a target and a range of funding where we would say, okay, here is how the region is performing on different things like safety and housing production and congestion and congestion mitigation metrics, so that there could be a division between what SACOG continues to do with a really good and robust funding round program that you'll hear about after this item, and ensuring that we also are not disrupting the many decades-long processes in El Dorado and Placer counties that we think work really well. The second piece of this is that we would formalize what has been an informal practice of having SACOG staff supporting the funding round processes in El Dorado and Placer counties, sitting on the review committees, providing technical assistance. The third piece of this proposal is that we would bring more transparency into the process, and we'd actually have SACOG get briefings and hear on what decisions are made in the other 2 counties that are not part of our 4-county process. And then the final thing links back to the third part of the corrective action, that we would now then going forward have the SACOG board take an action that we would deem as the selection of all projects for federal funding after the processes go through the 4-county process for SACOG, the 2-county processes for El Dorado and Placer. So moving on to the next and final slide here, we're continuing to meet with Caltrans and FHWA staff, but what we want to do is, as we're finalizing what I just walked through, we would bring back to this board in January an action to endorse a formal written proposal that we would then submit to Caltrans. Again, because this is a corrective action against Caltrans, we are supposed to respond to Caltrans, and they're putting something together to present to the Federal Highway Administration. So that is ultimately due to them by February. There is an extension where it's kind of do no harm to our current processes through the end of June. And so each of the 3 RTPAs is moving through a funding round process, and that won't be impacted by this corrective action. But depending on the outcome of this, it has implications for future funding rounds. And you'll hear in the next item on the working group, that's something where we hope to talk about this in more detail, and we'll have feedback hopefully by that point of whether our proposal is acceptable or not to Caltrans and FHWA. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any directors have questions, Barrett?
Chair Jennings, we have directors Soon, Clark-Kretz, Thomas, and Desmond with their hands raised.
Please call them in the order that they put their hands up.
Yes.
That was simultaneous.
Lynette,
Would you like to
Okay.
start with Director Soon?
I want to call them in the order that they had their
I
hands
think he
up.
was first.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Chair. So Eric, quick question from the process. I'm trying to reconcile what this means. The RTPA is obviously state funded. This applies to federal funding. And so I mean, does the, I don't know, does the need or the significance of RTPAs go away, or is it easy to just separate out and any SB1 funding can still be based on population to RTPAs, and the federal process is what you described?
Yes.
Tease that out for me.
So sure. So it is really they're really intertwined, and I think there's really bad outcomes if we were to try to disentangle RTPAs from MPOs. As a reminder, we have our funding round that we'll talk about in a minute. That at the 4-county level, we blend our state and federal funds, and so it's really difficult to disentangle those two things. So I think we would really, and we are intending to push back pretty hard on reducing the role of our TPAs. I think because they are not recognized federally, it's a challenge for, I think, FHWA to see how they fit in. But what we've continued to press on Caltrans in particular is the state, in law has created our TPAs. They have a state purpose, and the state should support that, and we as a region support that. This is also an issue in the other multi-county regions, so Southern California, the Bay Area, and so it's difficult to disentangle them. I guess I'll leave it there.
Director Soon, I'm glad we didn't have a workshop today, by the way, because I think this is our workshop. So, but let me try this, just anticipating maybe some of the other discussion, just in some ways from a lot of my experience at the federal level. So we're just talking about federal funds, right? We're just talking about federal funds. If we were here 30 years ago around this table, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because there would have been no devolution down to regional agencies or MPOs whatsoever. It would have stopped at Caltrans. We'd have nothing to talk about. And in 1991, of the ICE-T federal law, Congress devolved, the interstates were complete. Congress devolved money down to regionals, agencies like us, like MPOs, to say the big challenges now are within these metropolitan regions. So figure it out, MPOs, right? And then the state followed actually with some state devolution as well. So we're only talking about the federal funds in this case. And federal policy through Congress over the last decade has also been much more performance-based. What's the bang for the buck? So what they don't want is to think that we are taking money here and just cutting it up, either 3 ways or 20 ways or 50 ways. They want to know, are you funding the best projects, right? That's what they want to know. And what our response is, our RTPA partners are absolutely critical to understanding what the best projects are, right? So we've already got, as Eric said, I think a pretty decent process. We know we could strengthen it, and that's our proposal that you'll see in January. But if you remove the RTPA from that, we feel like we don't have our eyes and ears in our 2 counties. So good projects. We know some of the federal, we work together even closer. We think we can kind of figure this out. It's not about RTPAs going away, although, I know it's very frustrating. We talk to our federal partners and they say, well, we don't recognize or see you. Like, that's not nice to hear, because that's a part of how we do business in our region, right? But I want you all to understand, though, that there's a very important federal component to this. Is we have to take this regional view, urban, rural, right? And we have to fund projects that meet performance measures, because this whole experiment that's been going on for 30 years to devolve money to us, we should not take it for granted. We should do a good job. We should be high performers, good partners, because it could be taken away from us at some point in the future. So that answer, though, is including our RTPA partners on the ground in Placer and El Dorado, who we think have had a longstanding, working partnership with us. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair Jennings, we had Director Clark Kretz with her hand raised. Would you like to go to her?
Please.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it known the town of Loomis is significantly impaired by these funding based on population. And it would be great to have needs-based projects that would be able to make our town better. And so I'm all for it. And I think that that's been a big problem, especially with rural areas. And I think it'd be a great thing for us to focus on. So thank you.
Clark Kretz, just so I actually understand, because this is such an important point, and it's going to get to the next item, and it's going to get to the working group on the funding round. You're saying if you just divided by population, a town like yours that has a lot of needs actually exceeds a sort of a population share, if you will. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, we don't get the money that we need for our roads because it's based on population. And so it should be based on needs. And so we are, year after year, we get, we don't get hardly enough money for our roads.
And I'll try not to offer too much comment on this because it's such an important issue and it goes back to sort of policy and transportation. If we had had a population basis for transportation, we'd never build anything in Yolo County because the population is so small. We'd never build the Yolo Causeway. We'd never improve the Yolo Causeway. Back in the 1950s, we wouldn't have built the interstate system, right? Because Wyoming and Montana and everywhere in the middle of the country wouldn't have had the population share. It was a national program, right? So that said, you all come around the table and you ask, what's my fair share? Am I getting a fair shake in transportation dollars, right? That's part of why you're here and that's your job. And one of the criteria I think we've used traditionally is a population share sort of as a metric, right? And that's totally understandable. It just isn't permissible and it may not make the best policy sense. So we have to develop other ways, I think, of trying to get a sense from you all of what's a fair share while we're also investing in sort of the transformative projects that are truly regional in nature.
Director Thomas, Chair Jennings asked me to call on you on his
Yes,
behalf.
thank you. First of all, I would like to thank SACOG for partnering with us in this really critical issue. I'd also like to thank you for the staff report. This is a complex issue, and I found the staff report extremely clear, and just really wanted to recognize that. And I want to thank you for working with El Dorado County and Placer County to work toward a successful resolution on this. From a more, just like Director Clark Kretz was stating, from a more rural perspective, we often don't fit, well into the standard box of the urban platform when it comes to transportation funding. And yet it's hard for us to compete, and yet it's a delicate balance between needs and significance from a regional standpoint. And I think the direction that this is going finds that balance, and I appreciate that. El Dorado County and Placer County Transportation Agency, as the regional planning entities, have a long success and history of delivering successful projects of significance that are in compliance with federal and state guidelines. So we're not dealing with unknown quantities, and I think that's really important. Also, El Dorado and Placer County have a long success of partnering well with SACOG and you partnering well with us. And so really want to express great appreciation for that strong partnership that brings. And as you articulated, it is the local agencies, especially in these more rural areas that don't fit into the box, that know what we need, that are committed to making sure those projects fit, and are compliant with federal and state guidelines. So just want to thank SACOG for working with us and with Caltrans to successfully address this issue. Really appreciate it.
And then Chair Jennings, Director Desmond also had his hand raised.
Thank you, Lynette, and I appreciate the conversation. And this issue certainly exposes some of the tension sometimes of being, a regional body. Because I mean, I would argue that as a reflection of just population percentages based on population, there are also some urban areas where the need exceeds just looking at it from purely a population perspective. And I can point to several. Environmental justice communities in unincorporated Sacramento County. So I agree that we have to have really a hybrid approach, but keep population in mind. And Eric, a question I had for you is, you say in here, it just can't be based solely on population, but population can still be a factor. Is that correct? I'm just reading right from the staff report.
I appreciate the question. So, there is not a lot of clarity on this issue. I think we have not gotten clarification about whether population is not allowed at all. I think we are trying to, and I think we'll bring back a good approach that doesn't include population, but does include things that that reflect the needs and issues that you've all raised this morning, right? The urban issues and impacts, related to congestion, the the maintenance issues when you have heavily trafficked roads that, you know, serve farming and agricultural communities. So, so I think we're not proposing to include population as a direct factor, but I hope what we bring back will show you that there is a good hybrid approach in terms of the things that do reflect the diversity of our region.
Okay, I appreciate, I'm just reading right from the staff report where you said it prohibits making that allocation solely based on population, which would suggest to me that population can be a factor, just not the only factor. And I think, and I appreciate everything you just said about, and the discussion today, again, about making these decisions. And I think, but I think keep in mind, in other communities that are not rural communities, that have been locations where there's historic inequities, that we need to have other metrics in place in these communities as well. But I do think population is important, and I would like in your report coming back clarification to what extent we can, if at all, use population as some kind of metric. And I think in the staff report it also mentions that you don't think you're going to have to, correct me if I'm wrong, but you won't have to make any changes other than ensuring better transparency. Is that accurate?
Other changes.
And how you rank the projects or determine projects in El Dorado County and Placer County.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Our approach is that, again, because we're not sub-allocating on those factors, and so again, sub-allocation being a factor in how much funding goes to El Dorado and Placer counties, that's really where the population comes in at high level, where things break off. The projects will have eligibility screenings. They'll be ranked on performance factors and in a similar way to things that are ranked on performance factors in the 4-county round. So no, the intent is that they would come back to SACOG and we would approve a prioritized list from those two RTPAs.
Is population a factor either formally or informally in any of those decisions today in El Dorado or Placer County? And help me understand that.
So again, why this is actually good to have this and then the next item, okay? So think of this as I'm not quite sure what you call the chart, right? But the highest level here, we're really talking about the two RTPAs, El Dorado and Placer, and SACOG serves as the RTPA for the other 4. We can't just take our regional MPO share and divide that by population anymore. Just can't do that. So we're proposing an approach at this very high level. Then when that kind of comes down, we want to use similar approaches, but not identical in each of the El Dorado, Placer, and the 4 counties to award projects because there are different criteria, right? You're going to emphasize different things in Placer and El Dorado. And I think, Director Desmond, the working group that you're going to hear about next and that will carry forward over the next 18 months and weigh in on the next cycle of funding in the 4 counties is the appropriate place for you to answer a lot of these questions. But let me just say this. I do not think we should use population in these criteria right now, because I do think, while Eric is right, it's vague. I think we should develop a policy-based approach, and we should weigh that against. I know you all will. Your staff will give you here's the population breakdown, and here's the money we got based on. So we should always look at that. But to be good partners and to be a high-performing region, which we need to be, I would advise us not to use population, because I think that is the red flag that the feds are trying to avoid. Right? That's not to say we can't give you we'll give you the analysis. What does it look like based on population? And when you get down to a place like Sacramento County, as you know, right? It is when you look at the unincorporated county, as we have talked about quite a bit, you've got to factor in, okay, what's the investment in Sacramento Regional Transit, right? So we have a lot of entities that are actually providing transportation. We have Caltrans that's doing the Cap City Freeway. What's that benefit of the Cap City, right, to the people who live in each jurisdiction? Because we don't just stay in our home jurisdiction. So those are the complicating factors. Obviously, there's lots more to come on this, but I just wanted to give you sort of.
No, I was referencing the wording in the staff report, which says solely based on population, which again,
I think for this purpose of the corrective action in our 2 county partners and us, we can avoid population, come up with some good policy basis that we all agree on. I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Chair Jennings, Director Saylor has his hand raised.
Director Saylor.
Thank you very much. This has been a wonderful conversation. This is exactly the kind of discussion and dialogue that SACOG allows for, to hear the different interests from different parts of our region expressed in civil manner and find a kind of thread the needle and find a way forward together. That's exactly why we have this body. I'm really impressed with the staff sorting through this issue in a way that isn't just a binary choice, a forced decision of should we have all 6 counties in the same bucket, or should we have two counties operate independently. I think the nuanced approach is what we're known for, and it's really going to be our strength as a region. James, I can't let it pass that you referenced the state I grew up in and the county I live in, as you described the need to invest in projects and mobility enhancements in rural settings. I grew up in Wyoming. I live obviously in Yolo County, but the reason that you want to invest in some of those places is for enhancing mobility throughout the region, as you also stated, James. So the Interstate 80 managed lane project, for example, travels through our region, our entire region, and it connects us as a region to the rest of the mega region. So it happens that many of the miles that will be addressed in that project exist in Yolo County, but it's not a Yolo County project per se. It's in fact a regional project. And I think the lens that we have the opportunity to apply in all of our decisions here is through the regional lens and regional mobility. And frankly, that's what's going to carry the day with the feds and with our partners at Caltrans as they look at, are we making just provincial decisions about one jurisdiction or another? Are we competing with each other, or are we actually partnering, collaborating in the interest of a region-wide mobility framework that works for the entire region? So this is an interesting conversation, one that we're going to have for a long time. I like the avenues that staff are presenting as a way to continue us going forward, and I love this kind of conversation that we're having today. Thank you, Rick, for your time.
Thank you.
Chair Jennings, Director Kozlowski has a comment.
Yeah, I can't help but think that this population discussion is a proxy discussion for college admissions and another topic. But my question is that if we are contemplating, setting aside population in large part as a factor, does that end up taking us down the road of having to completely revisit the process that we came up with for how we fund projects that we literally just did in the last 18 months, where we have all of the prioritization and regional importance overlaid? Are we rethinking that whole process also ultimately? Because that was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. And just as a reminder, we had this very debate, many of you were around this table, right? In 2020, we had the debate among the 4 counties. Should there be a share of the SACOG RTPA 4 county money that should be allocated based on population? And it was a good debate. It was an important one. At times it was very tense and challenging, but it was, and we ultimately, you all ultimately decided not to go down the population route, but rather sort of a prioritization that your local jurisdiction would rank the projects. We'd work with you on 1, 2, 3. Ideally, we'd knock down that list. There's money out right now, $130 million in the 4 counties based on that exact approach, right? So this will be the second cycle we use that approach. And just FYI, that approach is held up around the state actually as a really good way to do this. That said, there are still a lot of questions, and there always will be, as long as you're paying attention, your staffs are paying attention about, are we getting our fair share? And so the very next item is going to talk about revisiting how we do that with a working group of the board and staff and public works and planning directors over the next 2 years, and examining this question again. It may feel like relitigating, but I think there's a lot of questions that have been raised. And I'd just be very direct. In the city of Sacramento, sent a letter a couple of months ago, right? Are we getting our fair share, right? So Absolutely. You should always ask that question. Are we getting our fair share? And what we'll say is, it's not as easy as just dividing by population, but we're willing to have that conversation. So that funding round working group is going to examine, right? Should we change the 4-county or rethink it or reassess it in any way? We think there's a lot that we did in that process in 2020 that's made a lot of improvements. It's provided more certainty for staff. But I completely understand that you're going to have staff do an analysis for you, as we would for you, on, am I getting my population share, right? And I just also want to remind you all the item at the Transportation Committee earlier this month on the Active Transportation Program, ATP, across the 6 counties. We did so well at the state level for bicycle and pedestrian projects. Placerville, West Sacramento, Yuba County, we exceeded our if there's no population, but if we had a population share for our region, we beat it. We exceeded it. Why? I believe because we did great applications, we had great projects, and we made our case. And that is how I think we need to pursue, right, the thinking around our projects, how we award money, our ability to leverage state and federal dollars. We're going to have to make our case and compete, even though sometimes it is true we are a little bit behind the starting line as a region. We don't have as much power as other regions, and it's hard to get our point across in Congress and everything else. But that's the downside of the population share sort of approach. We underperform.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, James.
Sorry, Director Saragosa has his hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've talking to some of my friends in Southern California as well as in the Bay Area. There seems to be also from their MPOs at least some quiet, not even quiet, but some discussions with the feds in regards to maybe a legislative fix to this problem. I didn't know if we've been approached to be part of any of those discussions, and if so, what the thoughts are of looking at that, so that we don't have to have this sort of, we can come up with a plan still, but that there's a legislative fix, and maybe, this all goes away. We don't have to worry about this every year.
I think we think it's a little premature to go down that route. This is at a staff level at FHW at this point, and we've looked at the code. We're hoping to resolve this amicably. This would, if there needs to be a clarification, it's something that could be done to some extent administratively at FHWA or USDOT. Obviously getting legislation passed in a potentially divided Congress is a big lift. And so I think we're focused on trying to, work out a negotiated settlement on this on our own.
So is this like, an AGPA at the federal transportation that have just decided to take this upon themselves to make this an issue? I mean, I get the administrative level, but how high of an administrative level?
I mean, this is, this is an issue that has been, officially communicated by authorized parties at FHWA to Caltrans to say, you must do this, and Caltrans is complying, and therefore we as the MPO must comply.
So Director Saragosa, definitely aware of those conversations, and we are, we have these partnerships with SCAG in Southern California and SANDAG and MTC, and I would say I'm not surprised that Southern California is, if anybody can think they could run a bill in Congress and win it, it would be honestly the Southern California delegation. And so if that is a route that they, as Eric said, I think our take here is, it's a lot like how we think of the state level, like, okay, tell me what you're trying to accomplish, just tell me your goals, and we'll tell you exactly how it can work here locally. I'm a little concerned about running a bill and maybe, the unintended consequences of that, or what I was saying earlier about maybe some frustration in Congress about regions coming together and want to cut money up, 100 different ways. Well, maybe this experiment is over. We should just take the money back, and that'll be that. So we're aware of it. If there's a real thing that moves, we would absolutely want to try to be engaged in it. So I don't want to try to be dismissive of it. I just think at the moment, as Eric said, it's a little early still. I have my concerns about what that bill would look like, what it would do, what both sort of support but opposition it would pick up, and what that would do to this 30-year experiment of devolution to regions to solve problems.
Understood. Yeah, I always hate having an administrative action hanging over my head as a from a regulatory body. I'd rather have more, know what my future is, but I understand what you're saying as well.
Chair Jennings, Director Baines would like to make a comment.
Yes, please.
I'd just like to thank everybody for this conversation. I think I want to thank staff as well. We definitely need to rethink the funding distribution because I don't feel Sutter County is getting their fair share. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Baines. Lynette, anyone else?
I don't see any other hands raised in the room, nor online.
That was a very healthy conversation, and I want to thank Eric for his presentation that led us to that healthy conversation. With that, we'll move to our last information item of the day, and that's the Regional Funding Round Working Group. And I'd like Christina to present this, if she will.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. Good morning, everyone. Continuing on the fun conversation of funding. So as mentioned a few times, we have been in discussions at board direction back in September to convene a working group to talk more about what our next funding round could look like, with the corrective action being one of those potential items. Next slide, please. So we are really excited because we have had interest expressed from board members across all of the 6 counties. So really trying to make this a 6-county discussion of how we move forward is really important to us. The recommendations that we put forward through this working group will influence the future funding round that we plan to do in 2024. And one of the other key points is also how the funding round can best implement our blueprint plan and goals, which you heard about earlier. The timing with that extension works really well with this to make sure that we're lockstep. Sorry. Next slide, please. So we have identified a few goals for this. So collectively, we really want to encourage board involvement and buy-in during the whole process to make sure that there's nothing left undiscussed throughout this, because we know it's going to be a difficult conversation to have. More specifically for the working group, understanding some basic funding round context, like what we do behind the scenes for a funding round, how it actually comes out, provide some transparency on the process, but also more importantly, getting the board's direction on programs, framework, and evaluation criteria that we'll be developing when we talk about awards and how the money is distributed amongst the region agencies. And then on our side for SACOG staff, I'm really wanting to get a deep understanding of what the partner agency issues and concerns that you all have been hearing and how we can best address those. Next slide, please. So we've talked a little bit about the corrective action, so that will obviously be a point of discussion that we'll be bringing to the working group. But just some other, in the early meetings that we'll be holding, these are really foundational, kind of setting the stage discussions to talk about, like I said, what goes on behind the scenes and what kind of makes up our funding round. And then subsequent later meetings will be more focused and structured discussions on things that will shape the funding round program, focus areas, and related framework. Next slide, please. So we plan to do a funding round, like I said, in 2024. And so we're going to hold regularly scheduled meetings, or we plan to, over the next year and a half. We anticipate, potentially these happening every other month or maybe every 2 months, depending on what works best for the working group that we'll figure out over time. But starting in January at that first board meeting, we'll discuss the intent of the working group more in depth and provide a structure for what those meetings will look like. February will be the actual kickoff meeting once we have all the participation that we need, and we'll refine the work scope as well. And then spring through fall will be where we start these focused discussions. So funding sources, applicability, how we use the different funding sources. We have, STIP and CMAQ and RSTP. So lots to talk about of how those get applied. And then fall through spring of the next year, we'll discuss that program, the framework, the criteria that we'll be coming up with. At the same time, I think it's really important to note that we're also going to convene a separate working group of public works directors, planning directors, other actual agency staff who will ask to appoint a representative to this board working group. So we have that constant communication, that constant collaboration, and there's nothing lost in translation, so to speak, and that everybody is sort of hearing everybody else's sides and issues. We also will be working with the Transit Coordinating Committee, the TCC, so our transit partners are involved. And we'll do the same, have an appointed representative sit on the board working group as well. So we're really kind of tackling all the issues together. Next slide, please. So just the next steps, between now and the end of the year, we're really going to take the feedback that we've heard from the Transportation Committee as well as today from the Board of Directors, work to confirm board member interest. So make sure that we have good representation and we have everybody ready to go for the beginning of the year. And then we'll work to formalize the plan details so we can come back in January, as I mentioned. We'll have the chair name the working group members. We'll have the board adopt a charge so we know what we're actually doing. And then kick it off in February. So I know it's kind of a lot of information there, but we're really excited to actually get this going. I think as you just heard in the last discussion, there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to work through, and we really need to be partners on this together as an agency. So we look forward to the discussions moving forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Question for Christina.
Hi, Chair Jennings. Director Gore has her hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the report. So with our previous conversation, I would think that it would be really helpful to have members of this board who also serve on PCTPA and the El Dorado County Transportation Authority as well. I think that would work really well. I'm sure your entities have already talked about that. I think that's really important, as well as having a staff member from each of those agencies participate.
Director Gore, actually, we did solicit some interest, and I know we paused a little bit to figure out timing and should we try to convene you now? We had a couple of you who were retiring from the board, but I do just want to say we have noted who's put their hand up and interested, and from the two counties, we have, I don't even have to say it, Director Joyner and Director Thomas. So exactly as you were saying, because again, because of that previous item, right? This should be a 6-county working group, because really we all see benefit in actually coming together and working much, we're already working well. We all think we can do better. And so we should approach this as a 6-county region. And so, yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you very much.
And it looks like Director Saylor has his hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item came up during our discussion of the funding round for this year, and Director Chenier had a concept that he wanted to bring to the board and asked us to take a look at how we proceed. And this, of course, builds on the prior funding round and the numerous modifications and improvements and enhancements to the process that we're implementing this time around. I see this as continuous improvement and continuing to find new ways to meet the interests of our individual jurisdictions acting together as a region. This is having this be done concurrent and aligned with the timeline for the funding round that we just announced going forward. Is perfect, because we're going to have real live opportunities to see, well, if we did it this way, maybe we'd achieve the triple bottom line of equity, environment, and economic benefit to the region even more robustly. So I think this is a very good way for us to be deliberate about our work and to continue to provide a forum for anybody in the region, any of the jurisdictions, the technical folks, the policy folks, to engage in a productive way for future improvement in the process. So I really appreciate the timeline and the very deliberate thought put into this process and look forward to watching it unfold. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Saylor. Any other hands up?
Excuse me, Director Lozano's hand is raised.
Director Lozano.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to apologize for being on, just having my picture up there. I'm under the weather and appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to join still. I just want to reiterate exactly what Director Saylor just said in terms of the net that we're casting for stakeholders in this process. And I believe that this will allow an opportunity for more cohesive understanding of the process from jurisdictional staff level through the SACOG staff level and as well as our partners. So thank you for this. And I believe moving forward, we're going to have a great process with everybody's input. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Other hands?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. Christina, thank you so much for your presentation. You did a great job. Thank you very much. And we have made it to the end of our agenda. The last item are the reports. And so I'd like to go to board member reports first. Then I'll give my report and then I'll turn it over to James to give his report. And then we'll be at the end of our meeting. So I'll go to director reports first.
Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Desmond.
Please.
Okay, well, just very briefly, I just want to say, and I could have brought it up in the context of the other, a couple other items, but just want to thank Casey came to the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors the other day to give us a presentation on the Blueprint project and other obviously related SACOG initiatives. And I think it was very, very helpful for the board members. So I just want to thank you for that. And you were just outstanding in your presentation and answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other directors?
Hi, this is Director New.
Okay.
I just want to thank James also for coming to visit Winters and talking about visiting Winters. On the 3rd of December is our tractor parade. And if you don't know, it's become quite an event. And I'm not, I'm inviting you all, but it starts at 6 o'clock. And last year it was so well attended that both Highway 505 exit and 128 exit into town were backed up quite a ways. So if you are going to come early, have dinner in one of our restaurants, our wonderful restaurants, enjoy, the wineries and stuff. The parade starts at 6 o'clock. It is, you can see some pictures from it if you just go to Winters Tractor Parade. And all the tractors are lighted. They are functioning in all kinds of ways. Santa does come in on a fire truck, that too, but it's quite an event and you would probably enjoy it. So come on in. Thank you.
And that is Saturday, December the 3rd, correct?
That is correct. 6 o'clock is when it starts.
6 o'clock.
Early.
And you want us to come early because you don't want us to get stuck in traffic.
Exactly.
And you want us to have dinner and maybe even stay overnight in winter.
Exactly. Have a wonderful time. And
I got you. I'm gonna put it on my calendar and I'm gonna do everything I can to be there for that event.
Great.
All right, sir.
I'll be looking for you.
Thank you. I'm gonna find you before you find me.
All right.
All right, thank you. Other directors.
Chair Jennings, this is Jay Chenier. So I am unable to make the meeting on December 1st. So this is actually my last SACOG meeting. And as Director Gore said, this is probably the most complicated board that we serve on, certainly on the technical part of it. And It's been a great experience for me. I just want to thank James and all the staff for all the work that you guys do. I don't think that there are a better group of people anywhere in the region as far as the work that you do and the level of sophistication that you bring that allows us to do our job. And I want to thank the board. I particularly want to thank those who were here with me when I was serving as chair of the board and we started the Youth Leadership Academy. I believe that's something that will continue here and has made a difference and will continue to. So just want to say thank you.
Director Chenier, we can't thank you enough. And that's why we're giving you a round of applause, and you will still continue to get your roses even after today. And I'm sorry you won't be able to be there on the 1st, but we will make sure that you know how much you were loved on this board and with SACOG. So thank you so much for all your years of service.
Chair Jennings, just because we've got a lot of new board members, and I just for the record want to state, I'm hoping we can get Director Chenier back here January and give him a proper send off. But
I like that.
He is wearing a pretty cool shirt. Well, you can zoom in. That's cool. He's wearing a pretty cool shirt. It's YLA, Youth Leadership Academy. And when Jay chaired this body, and some of you know this, but many of you weren't here, when we think about getting all the students into YLA and like, oh, this is great. And the students love it. And some of you come talk to them and we get inspired. That was one of Jay's many drives and visions. And I would say there was skepticism. You know, we had lots of questions, even as staff, like a lot of time to do this, a lot of investment. And it is just, I think, one of our signature programs, and it gives me a lot of hope about the future. And it's just the kind of legacy that Director Chenier has left. So I want to thank you, and thank you for being a great board chair when you served. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Any other director reports?
Go ahead.
Jennings, Director Soon. I'd like to pile on a little bit for Director Chenier. We can't let you go that easily, Jay, because you've been on this board for so long, and obviously the city council, and because we just made the vice chair selection today, I just want to say, you know, I had the honor of actually, you know, serving on the nominating committee when we made you chair, and I was new to the board back then, but I just want to say I noted, you know, the just your leadership was very steadfast, and watching, you know, you worked this room, so to speak, and you brought YLA, but you brought a lot of other soft skills and intangible things that the board really benefited from. And so it's been an honor to serve with you, not just here, but, you know, also on STA as well. And so we wish you the best. Thank you.
Other directors?
Chair Jennings, Director Frost has her hand raised.
Director Frost.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. I just wanted to say to Jay, I didn't realize it was your last meeting of the year, and I just didn't want you to go without taking a moment and letting you know that I have enjoyed working with you. Your leadership has been meaningful and thoughtful, and we're going to miss you on this board and others. And I just wanted to thank you, and I didn't want you to go without you knowing that I really enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Frost.
Chair Jennings, Desmond, I'd like to pile on if you don't mind. So I won't have a chance to thank you. I had a chance to thank my other outgoing city council friend, Jeff Harris, yesterday during Regional SAN. And yes, I haven't served you for very long, Jay, but I can attest to your sage wisdom and advice and de-escalation skills and in a lot of contexts, not just the SACOG context. And I will certainly miss you and all of the outgoing Sacramento City Council members, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Desmond. Other directors?
Director Saylor has his hand raised.
Director Saylor.
Most stuff been said, but not everybody said it. So I just want to thank Jay, not just for his work here, but for decades of friendship and and partnership. Jay and I worked together at the Legislative Analyst Office in the beginning of time, and I really enjoyed getting to know him there and watching his career.
1981.
I don't know what he said, but it was probably pretty.
1981.
He was 12. 1981. Well, you were a
Desmond
newbie.
said when I was 12. So.
but I really am so in awe of the work you've done, Jay, not just here as our chair and a colleague here, always navigating tough issues with grace and intellect. But the work you've done with Aggie Square is just incredible. It's going to have lasting impact and lasting benefit to the people you serve in your district and all of our region. And it was, I remember that spark of an idea before others came in and started taking credit for it was yours. So congratulations on exciting people to do something really big. Your legacy will live long after we're here. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks. And
Thank
John, let me just say the feeling's mutual. So I didn't expect any of this. I just wanted to say goodbye. But it's very, very much appreciated. I mean, I've been doing this, as many of us have, for 20 years. And I do think, people say, why do you do this? Or nobody says thank you. I think people do say thank you. And if you, as long as you internalize what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you want to get to, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than public service and knowing that you've made a difference. And hopefully there is some legacy. For me, little things that are pretty large. So our ride-free RT has been something that I think has changed the lives of families in a lot of ways. I think the work that we've done here and really recognizing how important it is to collaborate across this region and to support one another, even though we've disagreed on some issues, the way we've done it is a model. And I just really appreciate that because it's hard to do. So thanks.
So Jay, I'll get the opportunity to have some words at some of our final meetings and talk about you. But for those who don't know, I followed Jay everywhere that he's gone, on the Sac City Unified School District, to the city council, to being the chair of SACOG. I've followed Jay, and it's been one of the best big brothers that I've ever had in my life. And so Jay, I'll have an opportunity to pour on a little bit more at a later time, and join with James Corliss in making sure that you come back in January so we can all say what you mean to us. Okay? Other director reports.
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, I'll just give a quick report and then James will give his report and we'll be done. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be chair of SACOG this year. I have watched each of you as you have governed, and I have learned so much from each and every last one of you. And I want you to know that I've grown as a leader, and I just want to thank you for your love, your support, and your encouragement. I am confident in the new leadership of Chair Patrick Kennedy and Vice Chair Michael Saragosa, and I am confident that they will continue to serve us well. Vice Chair Kennedy would have been here today, but he is out of the country. And so he sends his not condolences, but his apologies for not being able to be here today. And then the last thing I just want to say is on December the 1st at 9:30 a.m., it's important that all of us be able to be there for that meeting. That's December the 1st, Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Those who can anyway, the committee meetings for the month of December have been canceled. And we hope that everyone will be able to join us in person as we talk about SACOG's major accomplishments throughout the year of 2022. And then also to honor our retiring board members for their service. And so we hope, if you will, you'll join us for that meeting in order to be able to do what we did for Jay today for all the members who will be retiring from the service at SACOG. So if you mark that on your calendars, I would deeply appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it over to James.
Okay, thanks, Chair Jennings. Just a few updates before we wrap this morning. So thinking ahead to next year, it seems remarkable that we're doing that, but obviously you took an action on that in terms of your leadership for next year. I want to give you, after consulting with Chair Jennings and Vice Chair Kennedy, here's how we are proposing to, and some of the committees, we had this discussion, to run the board meetings and committee meetings next year. We are going to propose that all of your committees, and we believe we can do this, are remote. So all the committees remote and all the board meetings in person. So the idea is we want to try to have this once a month, try to get you all here and get you around the table in person and have that sort of the camaraderie and the give and take. And then in committees, we just believe that it is very convenient for you to be able to, Zoom in. And some of you come in person, and we often play one is the loneliest number when Chair Kozlowski sits here by himself. We don't want to do that anymore. Committees all remote next year, board meetings in person. 3 of these board meetings, and your staff is working on this right now, we are proposing to be offsite and to actually move around the region. Part of our commitment that you have made and that we have made around equity and engagement, we actually want to go and understand the communities that we are talking about. And we want to have at least one of each of those in a different county, maybe over a 2-year period. We hit all 6 counties. So stay tuned for that. But I know those of you that we've talked to, you're excited about. It'll be kind of like the Super Bowl. So you put your bids in to host the SACOG board for next year. It's going to be very exciting. So look forward to that. For your committees next year and committee preferences, if you're returning, and unless you are absolutely retiring, we hope you're returning. Our fingers are crossed. And Lynette will be sending out today a committee preference survey. So in there, you will see the usual lineup of transportation, land use, natural resources, and policy innovation. You'll also see the Mega Region Working Group, because we'll have a few spots free on the Mega Region Working Group next year. And you'll also see Race Equity Inclusion Working Group, because we are going to, and we're talking with Chair Jennings about reforming the REI Working Group. Many of you on the funding round working group have already put your hand up. If you haven't done that or you're unsure, just let us know, let Lynette know. But we do have a lot of volunteers, as we were saying earlier, for that. Garrett mentioned earlier, November 18th, right here in this boardroom, Friday, November 18th, 8:30 a.m. is the ULI debrief lessons learned on suburban commercial corridors. So would love to have you. You can Zoom in for that, but we'd love to have you in person or your staff. We'll certainly keep getting the word out on it. And then, as Chair Jennings said, December 1st, if you can make it in person for that last board meeting of the year, that would be great. We'd love to have all of you, as many of you as possible, in person. And just a final note, it's been referenced, and I think this was an idea from a number of board members early this year. We are now wrapping up our round robin of councils and board of supervisors. It's been fantastic to get on the road, honestly, and to get out to each of your jurisdictions, to get a little bit of a sense of what your meetings look like, to tell you a little bit and your colleagues and your residents about what's coming up in Blueprint. And I think we're at about 26 of 28. So we're really close to hitting the 100% mark. And one thing I say when I kind of tee up those presentations, I show the map of the region and I show all 28 jurisdictions, and I look at everybody up on the dais and say, you're each around this table. Every jurisdiction from Sacramento County to Colfax to Ileton, you sit around this table twice a month. And regions this large geographically don't get to say that because they usually rotate seats. They usually have, as the Bay Area has 110 cities and counties, right? So they have rotating representation, not full representation. And we'll have plenty of time to talk about this, but I think that's one of the things that makes this board special. I know this has been in many ways a challenging year, but I think as Chair Jennings so eloquently has said several times, I'm really honored to serve you and to see this board's engagement, wrestling with issues, even today's conversations. And there are other agencies around the country who I network with and know it is not, I think, as constructive as this board has been over this past 2 years. So as much as it's challenging and hard, I really want to recognize you've got something special here. That is both in terms of this region and the way that we're built and the way that you're sitting around the table twice a month, but it's also down to each and every one of you. And with that, we're going to go back to our friend, Director Chenier here. We're going to close it out with the plaque because we just can't wait for the plaque. So if you give me another round of applause for Director Chenier.
Okay, I like that. Jay, could you read that plaque for us, please?
Just says Jay Chenier for exemplary service to the region as a member of the SACOG Board of Directors. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Did we put in quotations exemplary? Because that's how we all feel, my friend. So congratulations. I wish I could be there. Okay, the remaining items on our agenda are receive and file. If there aren't any questions on those items, then we will adjourn this meeting. As I said earlier, the next meeting will be Thursday, December the 1st at 9:30 in the boardroom. And I do encourage and hope that every person will make an effort to attend in person. With that being said, this meeting is now adjourned.
Aloha.
Mahalo.